So, welcome back to another playoff prediction series. Last week we kind of hit a dud. Well, actually, we definitely did. I got all my picks wrong, unfortunately, even though they were all crazy games, one of the best divisional rounds to ever happen, and it was fun to watch. Obviously, some heartbreaking losses, including Buffalo's and Tampa Bay's too, and with Tom Brady potentially retiring, which I will get into. It's a tough loss for the Buccaneers, and Tom Brady, if he does end up retiring, which there's multiple sources saying he is, he's had such a great career and he has changed football and this era we've lived in, witnessing Tom Brady's greatness. Nothing will ever be close to what Tom Brady accomplished in these 2 decades of playing football. Anyways, we're going to head into the two conference championship matchups and we're going to make our predictions this week. So, starting off with Cincinnati versus the Kansas City Chiefs, the 2 seed versus the 4 seed. This is actually the first ever playoff matchup between these two teams. Cincinnati has won 5 of the last 6 regular season matchups, including week 17, where they had a 34-31 victory. And that was when Jamar Chase had 266 receiving yards along with 3 touchdowns. The Bengals, I mean, I know this was a while ago, but they are 2-0 all time in conference championship games. Patrick Mahomes is undefeated in conference championship games when it's not against Tom Brady. If it's against Tom Brady, he is winless. So obviously, he does not have Tom Brady matched up against them. So the Chiefs are going to look like favorites here. I mean, they obviously are. They're actually 7.5 point favorites according to the spread, which is a very large margin. The Bengals could easily cover that. The Chiefs are looking to become the 4th team to make the Super Bowl in at least 3 straight seasons. They would join the Bills from 90 to 93 and the Patriots from 2016 to 2018, along with the Dolphins from 71 to 73 to make it 3 seasons in a row. So obviously both teams very immensely talented quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, not the greatest year, but he's also really came back in the second half of the year. He's got his running backs involved, and his secondary is playing outstanding. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, the hottest quarterback wide receiver duo of the league. Joe Burrow is playing like the comeback player of the year, and Jamar Chase is playing like the rookie of the year. We go into these two teams, very high-powered offenses. The Chiefs are 4th in points per game. The Bengals are 7th. Chiefs are 3rd in yards per game. Bengals are 10th, and they are just very heavily great passing attacks on both sides. And now heading into the matchup. So let's break down how these two teams did last week in the playoffs. So the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow was sacked 9 times, and they still won the football game. So the key to beating Joe Burrow, everyone thought, was to sack him, get pressure on him. And they did that. They got pressure on him. Tennessee sacked them 9 times, which is tied for most in a single playoff game, and they still won the football game. And how was that? They contained the best football running back in the league, Derrick Henry. That was a big part in it. And they also converted on third downs. Big third down conversions. The Bengals were very good at third down conversions. So that's going to be key because they're going to be put in a lot of third and long situations against the Chiefs. But that brings me into my X factor for the Bengals, who is Joe Mixon. He's due to break out. He hasn't had a big game since week 10, which was, I believe, against the Raiders. And if he can have a big game, it'll really take the pressure off Joe Burrow because the Chiefs are such a high-powered offense, and the Bengals might be one of the only offenses in the league to be able to catch up with them offensively. But looking at this matchup last time, okay, obviously the Bengals won 34-31. It was a very close matchup, and it was all about the third quarter. The Chiefs held their ground in the first half. Let's remember, the Chiefs are the number 1 scoring offense in the third quarter, but the Bengals ended up outscoring them by 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, and they ended up outscoring them in the second half to win that ball game. And that takes skill right there. The Bengals, they are a great second half team. They don't have good starts historically this year, but they've had great finishes. And the Chiefs are also a team to have great starts and questionable finishes in the fourth quarter, at least. The third quarter, they've been excellent so far, but the last quarter is where they let up a lot. And looking at the Chiefs last week, I mean, they looked amazing. Patrick Mahomes looked unstoppable. The secondary looked very good and mustardable, even though Gabriel Davis had himself a career night. Obviously, there's going to be more weapons than Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and Cole Beasley, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and CJ Uzama. So the Chiefs have a tougher matchup, at least in like the weapons wise, but also Josh Allen is throwing the football too. So that running threat that Allen has along with his arm talent won't be there. But anyways, we look into these two matchups. The Chiefs last week, they executed on third downs just like the Bengals did, and their secondary stepped up when they needed it to, and their offense, they did a great job of time of possession and also scoring when they needed to. Obviously, Cincinnati last week, they played a great football game, and that's why they beat the number one seed in the AFC. These two teams are both great football teams. Don't get me wrong. What I was hoping for was a Buffalo Tennessee AFC championship, but obviously Ryan Tannehill had different plans. The Bengals, they took advantage of turnovers, and always turnovers and special teams are the huge factors in these matchups. We look at these two teams, they're both good football teams, like I said. They're both very high-powered offenses. So that's why turnovers and special teams make the difference in these games. Looking at last week, the Bengals had a very solid special teams performance. The Chiefs also had a very solid special teams performance. Obviously, Evan McPherson knocked down a lot of field goals, including the game winner where he went up to Joe Burrow before the game, and he was like, guess we're going to the AFC Championship. I love that guy as a rookie. Evan McPherson, 18-18 on the road. I mean, he's having himself an impeccable rookie season. He actually has the most points accounted for by a rookie. So, maybe he could be a little runner up in the Rookie of the Year. But anyways, that was a joke. Looking at this matchup, the Chiefs obviously they have an identity. The Bengals do too. And I just think that the Chiefs are the much better team. We look at these teams, compare them on paper, they're just a much better team. The Bengals, let's face it, they honestly aren't the second best football team in the AFC. They don't have a right being here. The Bills obviously were, but they faced the Chiefs and lost. So this is kind of gonna be a lopsided matchup. But like I said, if the Bengals can do what they did last week, which is force a bunch of turnovers and win on special teams, they can win this football game. But that is a huge factor in this game: turnovers and special teams. When you have these two electric quarterbacks, those extra possessions from those turnovers, they are huge. And the Chiefs this year have been 12th in interceptions compared to the Bengals 15th. So the Chiefs are better at forcing turnovers. They're also 6th in the league for forced fumbles. So the Chiefs create turnovers. And last week, they were without Tyrann Mathieu. They have him back this week. So that will be a huge part of this Chiefs defense. He's also a very great coverage player and run stopper, and he forces a lot of turnovers. So with Tyrann Mathieu coming back, I have the Chiefs winning this ball game in conclusion. 34-24, and the Bengals will not cover the spread, but they potentially could. It would be a very good bet to put on a 7.5. They could definitely make it a one-score game. And now let's move on to the 49ers and the Rams. The 4 seed Los Angeles Rams versus the 6 seed San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are 3.5-point underdogs via spread, and the Niners are also 9-3 against the spread versus the Rams over the last 12 games. And I mean, let's talk about history. Obviously, the Niners, they have history in the playoffs, a rich history embedded by Joe Montana, Steve Young, and I guess for one season, Colin Kaepernick. Anyways, the 49ers, obviously, let's talk about these two teams last week and their performances. The Niners won against Green Bay 13-10, despite failing to score an offensive touchdown. They are the 9th team ever to win a playoff game without scoring an offensive touchdown. Teams were previously 8 and 103, which is below 0.1 in win percentage. Nick Bosa has had at least half a sack in all 5 of his playoff games, and he's a huge factor in this pass rush. The Rams beat the Buccaneers despite blowing a 27-3 lead and losing 4 fumbles, 2 accounted for by Cam Akers, 1 by Matthew Stafford, and the other 1 by Cooper Kupp. And they became the first team in NFL history to lose a 20-plus point lead and lose 4-plus fumbles and yet still manage to win the game. And obviously, Todd Bowles had a 0 blitz on second down and put Cooper Kupp one-on-one with Antoine Winfield. I can't believe it. If Tom Brady goes out because of Todd Bowles, that's ridiculous. Former Jets player. And Matthew Stafford has yet to throw a pick in the postseason. And the Rams are 8-0 this year when Stafford doesn't throw an interception. And the 49ers are 7-0 when Garoppolo doesn't throw a pick. So now let's dive into these two matchups. The Rams and the Niners. This matchup is all about QB play. So that's why turnovers are a big factor again. Jimmy Garoppolo has struggled immensely in the playoffs. He's made poor decisions. His job is being a game manager, yet he can barely muster it out to do that. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, has played excellent up until the last half of his last playoff football game, where he made some very poor decisions and had some very costly turnovers. And I don't think you can all blame it on Matthew Stafford, but he is facilitating that offense, and what happened was unacceptable. They almost lost to the Buccaneers after being up 27-3. And like I said, when these teams have high-level quarterback play, they don't lose. If Jimmy G does not throw a pick, the Niners are yet to lose this year. When Matthew Stafford doesn't throw a pick, the Rams are yet to lose this year. But guess what? They both have history of turnovers and being inconsistent. Matthew Stafford has played excellent so far in the postseason, but we are yet to see him, besides interceptions-wise, have a turnover. So we need to see that turnover happen. And the Niners can do that. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, they have an excellent pass rush and also a good enough secondary because they always expect the pass rush to get there in a fast enough amount of time. So they play kind of like a soft zone, and they just expect the defensive line to get there. So that's why their secondary is honestly not that great, but they're ranked pretty high just because their pressure rate is so high. But 100% is all about quarterback play in this football game. Looking at Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers compared to Stafford, Stafford is obviously outperforming him, and as he should be. But I just think this matchup favors the Niners. And now we're going to dig deep into why. Looking at this Niners team, yeah, Jimmy G, he's not that great. But he doesn't need to be that great because this team has a stout run game. Elijah Mitchell has been excellent in the playoffs, and so has Deebo Samuel. I mean, Deebo Samuel, they were playing in the snow. Let's not forget that. They didn't score a touchdown because they were playing in the snow. But guess what? They held Aaron Rodgers to 10 points. So let's talk about defense right there. They went into Lambeau Field and they held Aaron Rodgers to 10 points. And that comes with turnovers and special teams. The special teams forced turnovers and they had the possessions and they won the time of possessions and possessions overall. The Niners, that's what they do. They remind me of the 2008 New York Football Giants wildcard team, the team that stepped in to the NFC wildcard 9-7 and went all the way to the Super Bowl and knocked down the undefeated New England Patriots. That's what this Niners team reminds me of. Looking at this team, very similar play styles, great pass rush, great run game, a quarterback that just he needs to make big throws, but he's not that great. And Eli Manning did make big throws in the championship round, and I certainly believe that Jimmy Garoppolo will make a couple of big throws in this football game. It's a bold prediction, but I think Jimmy Garoppolo will make big throws in this football game. The Niners, they have a run game. The Rams, they have a run game, but not nearly as good as San Francisco. San Francisco, they have won the last 6 matchups against the Los Angeles Rams. So obviously they have their numbers lately. And let's talk about psychology now. The Rams, they were undefeated when leaving at half, 41-0. And then the Niners in Week 17 came back from a 17-3 deficit and won to make the playoffs. Let's talk about last week. The Buccaneers almost came back from a 27-3 lead to win the football game. 4 turnovers. They still somehow managed to win. But those kind of things, they will stay stuck in your head. The Niners are a smash-mouth football team. And the Niners are notorious for great starts. If the Niners can get a great start, the Rams will be so fluttered in their head that I don't think they'll recover. It's all about the Niners getting a good start, about Jimmy G playing good football, and about them sticking to their own identity. And I think the Niners can 100% do that, and I am picking the 49ers to win this game 20-17. The Niners are going to win this ball game 20-17. And the Super Bowl matchup will be the Kansas City Chiefs against the 49ers, a rematch, but this time probably not as close because this Niners team on paper is not as good as that Niners team the year that Raheem Mostert was their running back, and they torched the Packers with 233 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. But aside from that, sorry, Packer fans, about last week, I am actually winless when voting against the Rams, but I am sure, and I am putting money on this, that the 49ers will win this football game. So, in conclusion, Chiefs, Niners, Super Bowl. I hope to see you guys next time. Make sure to follow my Twitter, Kai W Godwin, and my Instagram, 32 Kai Godwin. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.